welcome to Access Ann Arbor. We have an interesting program for you today, and thanks for tuning in. Google Fiber in Ann Arbor, and we have three panelists here that are experts about Ann Arbor and about the initiative of Ann Arbor Fiber that Google has put together. Today we have Laura Patterson, who is the Vice President and Chief Information Officer for the University of Michigan, Tom Crawford, the Chief Financial Officer for the City of Ann Arbor, and Paul Courant, who's the Dean of Libraries for the University of Michigan and a Professor of Economics and Public Policy. So welcome to you all today. Now, Tom, you put together, were instrumental in assembling all the pieces for the application that was put together for this fiber project. Now, we're not talking dietary fiber, we're talking technology. So what is this project that Google has offered to communities and that Ann Arbor has taken the first step to participate in?
Well, a few months ago, Google announced their desire to install an experimental ultra-fast network with electronic fiber.
A computer network kind of thing?
Yes.
Internet kind of thing? Okay.
And they wanted to bring that to the home of between 50,000 and 500,000 residents. And that's a really exciting opportunity because when we say ultra-fast, it's at 1 gigabyte, which is a lot faster than people typically get. And when they announced it, they said that they had a couple of objectives. One was to learn new ways to deploy the fiber. One was to find a community that can help experiment and find the next killer application or new way to use it. And then they wanted to put their own kind of personality on it, I think. They want an open network. So they would like, once the network's installed, to allow any other company to use it, lease it from them, which is very different than the way things are done today.
Now, the fiber is actually it's like a wire, correct, that gets strung around underground and on telephone poles and that kind of thing. And I suppose that Laura should talk a little bit about that. You've been involved in this project, and 50 to 500,000, that fits within Ann Arbor's kind of population dynamic. And obviously the University of Michigan is going to have a huge role and be a chief generator for a lot of the innovation and passion for this kind of a project. What's been the University of Michigan role, and how can the university benefit from this kind of a project?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, the city really is the initiator, and Tom and people at the city have done a great job of stepping up. The university really tried to help because we have...
Now, you were saying a good thing about a city bureaucrat. Is that correct?
I am.
I think we can be very proud of our city bureaucrats here in Ann Arbor, but they did do a good job.
Well, I have to say, this has really been a community an effort. We've had a number of organizations come forward. The U of M is probably the most present, but we have Spark and some others. But the relationship with the U of M has been absolutely critical, and has gone a long ways to making a quality application.
So, and what was that role?
Actually, that is what's been so exciting, is that the community did come together around this, and so did the students. The students were absolutely excited about it, holding flash mobs on the diag, and within the university, we have high-speed networks. So it's like extending the university's high-speed network to the homes of people in Ann Arbor. And so the opportunity for the university is huge. I mean, at the most basic level, you know, more than 2/3 of our students actually live off campus in homes in Ann Arbor, but they're still connecting, they're still interacting with faculty, they're still trying to download materials. And so from an educational perspective alone, it's a big plus. The health system believes that this would revolutionize the way they interact with patients, the way that a physician could deliver an image to a patient to their TV on the home and monitor patients within their home.
So you're talking about the hospital,
yes,
primarily.
Yes.
I mean, the health system is more sophisticated than that, but that health megaplex on the hill,
That's right.
I can imagine that would be a tremendously exciting for them. My brother's a radiologist, and I can imagine the kind of high definition pictures, not just high-definition television, but extremely fine-grained stuff that you would need for medical kind of examination. Plus, there's just a tremendous amount of information that a hospital has to deal with. Is that the kind of thing?
Exactly, exactly. And the Merit Network, through a federal grant, is expanding further into the state. And
Now,
so
what's the Merit Network?
that's the statewide educational network that all universities in the state, almost all universities in the state, are a member of.
And that was like a forerunner to the internet
right.
back in the early or mid-1960s,
That's
correct?
right. And so the fact that they are extending high-speed network into other parts of the state would allow our medical center to interact with other hospitals around the state in ways that currently we cannot, and into the homes of those patients.
Putting us on a literal cutting edge of the world in terms of that kind of information exchange and technology if this project comes through.
That's right. It's also exciting to think about what we might be able to do with our performing arts. The School of
Dear to my
Music,
heart.
Theater, and Dance. Right, that's right. I would think you'd have
People
a
can
big
pirate
interest in
movies
that.
much more
There
easily
you
now.
go.
Now, Paul Courant, your role with the library, I know you've worked with Google in terms of having them extract a lot of books and other works that are lodged at the library and making them available online. So you have a long history in working with them. What does the Fiber project, what excites you about that? And you also have this expertise in economics, and I'm imagining there's an economic boon to this kind of a project.
So I think the potential economic boon is really just enormous. So the kinds of things Laura was just talking about the medical applications, for example, that's actually going to lead to new ways of doing patient care. New products, new techniques will be developed. Those will have to be constructed. Those will be invented. The source of Ann Arbor's prosperity for over 150 years has been this environment of innovation that we've had. The internet is very big, and of course we were one of its initial developers, and this is going to be like, it's almost like the railroads 150 years ago, right? Every town wanted to be a railroad stop because that's how you hooked up with the rest of the world. If we get this thing, which we absolutely ought to, then we will be the town that is learning how to really use very, very high-speed communication. We can have productions at multiple sites, for example, that would show up on a screen at your place or on a screen at North Campus. Basically, though, the most exciting thing is there'll be innovation around the information technology itself, and then there'll be innovation that uses the information technology, because households and businesses will be able to interact with images, with video, with audio, with ideas, with texts in a way that just has never been true before. So we'll learn an enormous amount about what's possible, and when you learn new things, that's the source of economic strength and innovation as well.
You know, that's why Ann Arbor really is a great choice for I think Google to choose, is because the ideas that we have here, not just the university but the culture and that we have in Ann Arbor, is one that's very open to new ideas and experimentation, and that's a good thing for the leading edge of technology.
Well, and the way that Ann Arbor and the university have worked together throughout the history, the almost 150, over 150 years. And you've got some very good examples of those kinds of things where the town, Ann Arbor, and the gown, the university, have worked together to encourage innovation and just on a practical level are partners in what we do.
So more than 150 years ago, 1852, the university built one of the biggest and best telescopes at that time in the country. And
in the world, wasn't it?
In the world.
And this was at a time when Ann Arbor was literally a Wild West town, with hogs running wild on the street. There was no police force, and we had the third largest telescope in the world.
And we had it in part because of the connection that it made between town and gown, between science and business. In order to know what time it was exactly, you needed to have a very good telescope to watch the transit of the sun or of any other celestial body at in a particular place. You then know what time it was. There was then a telegraph key. The astronomer would transmit the time. It would be sent by telegraph across the railroad lines to Detroit, and a flag would go up on the Detroit River and everybody would be able to set their clocks correctly, so then they would be able to use their chronometers to know where the ships were so they didn't bump into things in the Great Lakes. So the
Whole different notion of network.
whole different notion. They didn't have GPS in those days. So in order to know longitude, you had to know what time it was, and that's how the network was used. The money for that project came from donations from the business people in Detroit who wanted Detroit to prosper as a Great Lakes port. And then there was a little bit left over to build the third biggest telescope in the world and create science in Ann Arbor. We've been doing that for 150 years. This is the next step in doing that kind of thing.
University
And the
town, and business all working together.
Yep.
Perfect intersection, goes right back to the core. And I think that kind of thing works today, has gone through the history of Ann Arbor, and there's been an initiative that you guys from the university can talk about within the last 5-7 years of marrying technology, innovation, and business in ways that haven't been as aggressively pursued in the past. Mary Sue Coleman has provided a lot of leadership on that.
Oh, that's absolutely right. In fact, that's much of what was behind the university's decision to acquire the Pfizer property and try to, in that physical space, bring together researchers and new businesses so that we could more rapidly move innovation to market.
There's one other technology which is worth talking about. It's distance learning. We've all heard a lot about distance learning. The university hasn't been the most active place in it. But when you go to a gigabit instead of whatever you can get over the network now, which is 100th of that or 200th of that, then you can actually do very, very high bandwidth, high definition distance learning, and new ways of doing it will be created. We'll use them. That'll be terrific because we can pump out the kind of information and the kind of teaching that is so valuable to us, but the rest of the world then gets to benefit from that as well, and there will be industry built up around it. It has to happen.
And the University of Michigan, its library in particular, is a world resource. Now, when we're talking about the speed of this wire, these fibers that that we hope are installed as part of this Google project, what does that mean to a layperson? So, I want to download. I've got my Netflix subscription, but I still go to movies at the Michigan Theater, of course, and it takes a half hour, 45 minutes to download this on my connection that I have, AT&T or Comcast or whatever. If you had this kind of a fiber, this kind of gigabit access, what does that mean in terms of that timing? How much information? How long would it take to download a movie that would typically take 15 or 30 minutes to download? Would it be like that?
Right. It'd be less than 30 seconds, maybe 15 seconds.
And you know, again, movies aren't going to be the primary thing. It's how a scientist or a technologist or someone who wants to get a whole large file of information from the library.
Or dozens of people, say scientists, with different laboratories in different parts of the country, because we'll have this fast network between places, able to talk with each other. Dozens of students and faculty in Ann Arbor in the middle of a snowstorm being able to do the project they wanted to do together, including, plausibly, high-speed video production. It's that kind of very, very rich collaborations that will now be able to be done at different locations at the same time.
Yeah, something a lot of people